You didn't stumble onto this message by accident. You're here because deep down, you know you were never meant to shrink to fit systems that fear your power. You're not lazy. You're not lost. You're tapped in. You're one of the rare ones bold enough to walk away from what insults your soul. And every time you do, you evolve into a version of yourself so unstoppable. The world has no choice but to take notice. This isn't failure. This is your origin story. You're not quitting. You're upgrading. And the moment you chose truth over tolerance, the universe started rearranging itself to reward you. So if you've ever been pushed out, counted out, or told to be realistic, congratulations. You're the disruption they never saw coming. You're not here to survive their world. You're here to build your own. Let's go. What you carry isn't just brilliance, it's catalytic voltage. Entering their domain, your field disrupts every dull circuit they've ever relied on. You move like encrypted code from another reality, and your presence instantly scrambles their scripted sense of self. They can't match your internal architecture, so they label it a threat. Where they wear veneers, you embody essence. Where they rehearse, you radiate. The confidence they misread as arrogance is actually firmware installed by a higher intelligence. They don't understand your build, so they brand it incompatible. They orchestrate your dismissal not because you failed, but because you revealed the facade. You shatter the illusion that limitation is the norm. You threaten the very belief that one must shrink to survive. You don't fit their mold because you're here to break it. No company can exile a soul from its mission. They can't strip light from the sun. It only relocates to a more receptive sky. Each so-called loss is the ignition switch to your next expansion. Each closing door releases a surge of force, propelling you to uncharted opportunity. You don't glow. They flare out, trying to compete. The gravity of your being bends their reality, and that dissonance cracks their ego. You are not here by accident. If you feel the pull, the knowing deep inside that you are chosen, this is your moment. Click the super thank you button and give $50 or more to unlock deeper insights, exclusive content, and a path that aligns with your divine purpose. This isn't just a contribution, it's a declaration, a step toward who you were meant to be. Answer the call, walk with us, and step fully into your destiny. Your journey begins now. Prosperity doesn't trickle toward fear. It stampedes toward those who say no to being dimmed. The moment you walk away from scarcity disguised as structure, the grid reroutes to fund your truth. Their ceiling was your launchpad. Every resource they withheld now snaps back to you, multiplied through unseen accounts. You don't beg for access. You are the frequency that opens every vault. A sense of inward clarity begins to replace the desperation for external validation. Flow is not chased. It's unlocked when internal alignment meets fearless decision. The deeper one tunes into their core rhythm, the more the external world begins to shift and rearrange, not out of obligation, but recognition. This isn't about rebellion or defiance. It's about resonance. When compromise is no longer an option, abundance starts to echo back the truth of who you are, not what they expect. Walking away from a scripted certainty isn't reckless. It's a recalibration toward vastness unseen by those bound to linear thought. To step beyond their metrics is to enter a new landscape where meaning is not inherited but authored. The path rarely appears paved. Instead, it reveals itself through disruption. What feels like collapse is often the blueprint dissolving. Closed loops and expired roles aren't rejection. They're the system expelling what no longer fits your signal. Apparent failure is not ruin, but a redirection too complex for those who cling to pre-approved patterns. While some view the departure from societal roots as loss, in reality, it clears the static. What they mislabel as collapse is actually you sinking with possibilities too expansive for their dialect. The strategy playing out is one they lack the altitude to perceive, an unseen sequence, moving pieces into positions of power without spectacle. A curious paradox begins to unfold. The less approval is pursued, the more power consolidates. When detachment becomes your signature, gravity alters. No longer orbiting artificial centers, your presence forms a new constellation, pulling in the rare and the real. This isn't carelessness, it's clarity. In a world addicted to reaction, neutrality becomes its own frequency, unshakable and magnetic. Walking away isn't loss, it's leverage. The moment comfort is no longer your currency, negotiation transforms into command. What they call aloofness is simply the refusal to engage in unequal exchange. From that stance, doors appear that didn't exist in their architecture. It begins like a whisper behind the veil, an invitation disguised as unease. The structures crack, not from chaos, but from the pressure of something greater trying to break through. Reality, as once accepted, dissolves. Behind it waits a deeper layer where invisible architects feed on inertia, not fear. And yet within this distorted terrain, a map lights up. Not everyone hears the call, but those who do can feel it in their marrow. Some energies aren't meant to conform. They're here to disrupt, awaken, and realign the coordinates of existence itself. The convergence has already begun, gathering those encoded with frequencies that fracture illusions and restore coherence. Chosen not by coincidence, but by alignment with a frequency that pierces veils and calls forth the architects of a new era. Those once scattered across disciplines, paths, and experiences begin to recognize a shared code written in the language of intuition. Not bound by titles or belief systems, this convergence forms from resonance, not recruitment. It isn't an invitation. It's a pulse from the unknown, amplifying the signal of those tuned to it. The moment of hesitation separates potential from activation. What stalks in shadows understands the magnitude of what happens when this decision is made, and trembles for good reason. Something ancient shifts when the hunger for approval dies. The second dependency fades, reality folds in on itself to deliver something rare. Dignified exits become launch points, unwanted in hollow hierarchies, yet vital where brilliance is the baseline. Fire left untamed turns into clarity, and from that clarity emerges a different kind of legacy, one not built by permission, but precision. They see volatility where we see vision. Silence becomes a forge where dormant abilities sharpen into tools too exact for the world that once rejected them. Dismissal becomes the first domino in an unstoppable sequence. The moment distortion loses its hold, the signal purifies. Misunderstanding stops being an obstacle and starts becoming evidence. Not artificial charisma, but unfiltered essence begins to emit influence that draws in exactly what serves the mission. Shrinking to be digestible fades. Radiance that doesn't seek permission rises. Each layer stripped away releases stored force. The fracture points aren't brokenness. They're the cracks that let emergence occur. Boundaries once blurred now become gates only truth can cross. All those drained timelines collapse. The instant self-loyalty overtakes inherited tolerance. What the world interprets as solitude is actually recalibration. Remaining in contaminated environments becomes impossible once clarity sets in. The field adjusts, when intentions harden into direction. Each so-called loss is prelude to precision. Doors don't close by chance. They shut to direct you toward entries invisible until you're ready to walk through them. Those who detach from their distortions open into spaces where velocity accelerates. Patterns break, echoes vanish, and where there was once dependency, now there is power distributed across aligned connections. Something profound happens when distorted connections are severed. It's not just the mind that clears, but the entire cellular symphony recalibrates. Muscles unclench. Color returns. The entire form begins to reflect the absence of silent warfare. These aren't surface-level shifts. They're the visible echoes of restored inner harmony. No longer drained by hidden agreements, the system reallocates its fuel. Vision sharpens, breath deepens, movement transforms from defense into expression. Once the siphons are removed, dormant capacities reawaken, like archives unlocking themselves after centuries of stillness. What once felt like resistance now reveals itself as refinement. The very traits they labeled difficult become proof of discernment honed by experience. Resonance draws resonance, and former outliers become architects of new alliances. Formerly subtle cues become unmistakable signals. What leaves, leaves for good reason. The field becomes lighter, more precise. From this clarity, connections emerge that feel like remembering something ancient, not meeting something new. Prosperity flows toward the ones who no longer grasp, who have replaced clutching with confidence, and who understand that openness is not weakness, but readiness. Departures become tools of precision, not reactions to pain. Withdrawal is no longer retreat, it's realignment. Stepping back becomes stepping into vantage points unseen by those locked in the battlefield. There is a strength in measured silence that speaks louder than defiance ever could. The art of exit becomes the craft of emergence. No longer seeking to win in broken systems, the focus shifts to building from coordinates only understood by those who've mastered detachment. Loss transforms into leverage. The act of letting go becomes a portal into a timeline where sovereignty becomes strategy. To carry experience like weaponry is to become the storm after the silence. Every collapse becomes curriculum. The fire wasn't punishment, it was instruction. Out of burned-out spaces come structures that operate beyond mimicry. The lessons are no longer stories, they become protocols. Pattern awareness evolves from instinct to interface. The mind recognizes dysfunction before it even forms a sentence. Systems once designed to entrap now appear as transparent mazes to be bypassed. Survival becomes architecture. Strategy replaces reaction. The universe doesn't apologize for what broke you. It weaponizes it. And in that, true mastery begins. Dear brothers and sisters, may the peace of God fill your hearts today. I come to remind you of a profound truth. Our lives are firmly established in God's divine purpose, untouched by the fleeting worries of this world. As Scripture tells us, give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. Luke 6:38. Like the mighty oak whose roots are planted deep in rich soil, our foundation is anchored in God's eternal truth. Every move we make, every stand we take, is upheld by His enduring strength. Today, you have the opportunity to participate in this divine blessing. By clicking the Super Thank You button and offering a gift of $20, you will sow into a harvest that will return to you many times over in God's abundant grace. Adaptation forged in fire becomes the sharpest kind of intelligence, one not taught but encoded through direct confrontation with imbalance. Where others read graphs, you read energy fluctuations. Where others need proof, you feel the truth behind structure. Every setback recalibrates your navigation system until no trap can hold you. They've tried every angle, every mask, and still you slip through, wiser. Your instincts outpace their strategies because survival forced you to decode patterns they don't even realize they're repeating. What they call street smarts, you call sovereignty, and this intelligence can't be credentialed because it was earned in dimensions they fear to enter. The very pulse that makes you incompatible with their hierarchies is the same force that makes you essential to systems yet to be born. What they interpret as defiance is really clarity, your refusal to digest falsehood, no matter how well-dressed it appears. In a realm built on surface, your depth is disruptive. Where they demand compliance, you bring coherence. What unsettles them isn't your tone, but your refusal to dilute truth for comfort. You walk into rooms and awaken echoes of self-respect they buried long ago. They don't want you gone because you're wrong. They want you gone because your presence threatens their illusion's equilibrium. It was never attitude, it was alignment. Each time you draw a line, you remind them how many they erased for convenience. Each time you hold firm, their own wavering becomes unbearable. They don't fear your ambition, they fear your unwillingness to compromise it. Their systems survive on quiet compliance. Your silence is strategic, but never submissive. They misread your absence as surrender, not realizing it's the first tremor of a deeper shift. You never needed their seat at the table because you were learning how to build one made of truth. When you leave, the air changes, the weight shifts, and suddenly, the foundation they stood on feels hollow. What they experience as inconvenience is revelation. Every time you walk, a mirror shatters, not because you broke anything, but because your reflection exposed what they could no longer hide. In your refusal, a truth echoes louder than any speech. Their pushback isn't personal, it's systemic. Your resistance isn't rebellion, it's blueprint correction. While they scramble to fill the space you left, they're forced to face the weight you carried without acknowledgement. You were never optional, you were the axis. And now, as you move beyond their frame, the cracks widen, and through them, something better begins to emerge. Their downfall isn't karma, it's calibration. Systems built on borrowed brilliance eventually collapse under the weight of their own emptiness. Absence reveals what presence once camouflaged, not because silence is loud, but because their momentum was always yours in disguise. They discarded the very equation that made progress possible. Refusing to evolve, they opted instead to erase what they couldn't emulate. But erasure isn't an option when the blueprint resides in the very fabric of reality. What they thought was an obstacle was actually the operating key. And now, the machine grinds to a halt, revealing where the true current always came from. The balance was never mutual. They leaned harder than they admitted, draining reservoirs they pretended not to see. Removal of your presence uncovers the scaffolding they masked as structure. Their brilliance dims without the unseen generator they once dismissed. All the diagrams and charts fail to explain why nothing works now. Behind the facades of order lies a growing void, a crack in the illusion that no policy can patch. Leadership masquerading as vision becomes exposed in the vacuum left behind. They search for a substitute, unaware that what they lost was never a role, but a rare frequency not duplicated by resumes or titles. Every attempt to resurrect what your energy once animated becomes another failed ritual. They scramble not because they understand what's missing, but because they can feel the absence tightening like gravity. The very panic they tried to hide confirms what you always knew. You were the axis disguised as a cog. Their echo chambers, once so confident, now tremble with static. You became their pattern interrupt, and now chaos reclaims the space that was once held by your quiet precision. Their regret arrives not as apology, but as disarray, project deadlines, morale crashes, decisions collapsing into contradiction. What was once background support turns out to have been the central code. The very desperation they deny bleeds through their actions. Attempts to replicate you fall short, not because they lack talent, but because they lack essence. You were never just a presence. You were alignment incarnate. Their inability to replace you is the universe underlining what can't be reproduced through proximity alone. Their order depended on your frequency anchoring their illusion. With that anchor gone, everything they called stable reveals its synthetic core. What was once dismissed as eccentricity now echoes as genius. What they tried to suppress now defines their downfall. You were the pulse, and they've just learned the cost of misreading a lifeline as a liability. Carved from the frequency of defiance and truth, this gathering forms not from rebellion, but from return. Return to essence, to alignment. These are not outcasts. These are architects of new thresholds, refusing to sacrifice their soul for systems built on silent self-betrayal. Where others cling to illusions painted as security, this circle steps into the unknown, holding only clarity. The pattern is familiar. They abandon the familiar, not out of chaos, but from the sacred pull of accuracy. Integrity and expansion are no longer seen as opposites. Here, they fuse into blueprints for generational wealth that doesn't cost your spirit. Each no spoken builds a corridor into futures they once thought impossible. No cohesion is stronger than that formed by sovereign beings in resonance. This alignment is not built on shared wounds, but on chosen awareness. The standard isn't dictated by demand, but by discernment. Attraction is redefined, not by attention, but by boundaries. This isn't rebellion, it's resonance made visible. Each independent path reinforces the collective signal. The refusal to collapse into conformity becomes the shared language. Artists retain their voice. Strategists hold their ethics. Creators move in codes too complex for transactional minds. This isn't tribe by label. This is tribe by frequency, unified not by struggle, but by refusal to dilute what's real. What unlocks acceleration isn't sacrifice, it's synergy. This isn't about cheering each other on from the sidelines. It's about interwoven breakthroughs that multiply beyond linear understanding. Success here is exponential because it's sourced from alignment. When one crosses a threshold, it opens a corridor for the others. What once seemed rare becomes reproducible, not through imitation, but by ignition. While collapsing systems clutch at broken models, this network redefines victory as coherence. As the old structures implode under their own illusions, a new ecosystem rises, built not by force, but by frequency. The collapse of the synthetic becomes the rise of the authentic. The narrative they push can't compete with the results we embody. Criticism fades under the spotlight of evidence. The louder they react, the clearer the mirror becomes. What they ridicule is what they wish they had the courage to claim. Our shifts highlight their stagnation. Our upgrades make their excuses echo. What they call instability is the agility they can't develop. Every pivot we make reveals how welded they are to timelines that no longer serve them. Our motion is rebirth. Their stillness is erosion. As they grip their shrinking patterns, we move like liquid through portals of potential. We transcend while they calcify. No battle needed. Truth has a structure, and when something is built without it, time eventually exposes the flaw. Illusions may rise fast, but they fracture under pressure. What's held together by manipulation begins to unravel the moment authenticity walks away. Those who thought domination was power now face erosion from the very energy they once weaponized. Their actions are not forgotten, they are measured, and the measurements always return to scale. Without raising a hand, without uttering a word of vengeance, reality adjusts itself. Recalibration doesn't need drama, it needs time. And time is now revealing what was always unstable behind their appearances. The compensation isn't symbolic, it's systemic. What once went unseen is now being accounted for, line by line, in ways they never anticipated. Wealth arriving now isn't a bonus, it's correction. Each influx is a form of rebalancing. This isn't payment for labor, it's acknowledgement of essence. Energies once drained now reroute themselves toward their rightful source. The blocks they placed crumble not from external force, but internal void. Leaving was the trigger. What follows is exponential return. Currency becomes a language of validation. What once slipped through the cracks now floods in, as if the floodgates were waiting for permission to break. Each material gain holds a deeper meaning, confirmation that worth doesn't require negotiation. Prosperity isn't just showing up, it's making a point. Now is the moment to share God's blessings by clicking the super thank you button on YouTube. With a donation of $100 or more, you can actively participate in His divine mission and contribute to His greater plan. Every offering you make reflects the boundless generosity of God, and I trust it will return to you abundantly, far exceeding your hopes. Always remember, His protection and blessing accompany your every step and every act of giving. You are a vital part of His sacred design. You are strong and radiant, steadfast like His mighty rock. Experience God's miracles, feel the rewards of your generosity deep within your soul, and shine your light with boldness and faith. May you be richly blessed, and may the light of the Lord continually guide your journey. Gains made outside their systems carry a different vibration. It's not about accumulation, it's about reclamation. Not the kind of wealth that distorts the soul, but the kind that reflects it. What was taken by force is now being returned by frequency. Each denied opportunity is being replaced with openings more aligned, more luminous. While others chase status at the cost of self, this wealth affirms identity, not erases it. Not built through submission, but through stance. Not inherited from broken blueprints, but crafted from sacred defiance. The shift is not just financial, it's dimensional. When inner clarity meets universal timing, the result is elevation that can't be reversed. Not everyone can carry radiance through resistance, but those who do become the architects of an entirely new measure of success. This isn't a redemption arc. This is reclamation. What was always yours is finally arriving because you refuse to lower your resonance to fit a system built on distortion. The brilliance they tried to diminish has now become your signature. And as that radiance expands, others start to notice they were never broken, just buried. The strength it took to walk away becomes the spark that lights thousands of unseen paths. Abundance isn't granted, it's aligned to. And you, aligned, become proof that depth doesn't need to be sacrificed for elevation. Old categories fracture in your presence. where they once demanded a choice between purpose and prosperity. You reveal both as inevitable when the foundation is truth. You don't just exit corrupted frameworks, you broadcast what's possible beyond them. Every material gain echoes across fields, invisible to the eye, but felt by every soul still tethered to compromise. You're not simply thriving, you're translating what freedom looks like into a language others forgot they could speak. The glow-up isn't aesthetic, it's vibrational. Each advancement is a signal, and each signal becomes a portal. Every time your essence wins, the collective recalibrates around what's now proven possible. There's no longer a need to justify or explain. Arrival has replaced apology. The timeline where you remain unseen is no longer accessible. This new era isn't an accident. It's the outcome of dozens of courageous choices no one else was willing to make. You didn't stumble into this wealth. You claimed it by becoming immune to illusions. And now, the ones who once whispered doubts must sit in the brilliance of a reality they never believed you could build. The cycle of depletion has ended. The phase of overflow has begun. And the best part? No one had to lose for you to win, because your victory expands the map for everyone still making the choice to rise.